So many times we as women can fall into the kind of a trap of thinking he's sensitive, therefore he should be sensitive in the same way we are, and get frustrated with him when he is not. And so we misunderstand him. He's still a man. He's still male. His version of sensitivity is not going to be identical to ours.
That's so important. And it can be, I've been guilty of this as well with beta males that I've known. I go to them. I used to work with one, and I would go to him with my frustrations, just like I would with a female. And I caught myself doing it. And there were moments where I think he just kind of felt overwhelmed because Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fascinating Womanhood channel, where we talk about everything that has to do with femininity and building strong, long-lasting, loving relationships. I am Cherry Lynn, and I am here with my mom, Dixie Andelin Forsyth. Hi.
Hi.
So we are here today to talk about the beta male. I have to be honest with you. We had quite a process in writing this video. We've had a lot of women request it over the last couple of years, and we've not done it. We really took a deep dive into this process, and we realized that a lot of people on our team that we took the subject to had a lot of different ideas about what a beta male is. And usually when we sit down to write our videos, it's usually just between us, and maybe we'll do some research, and sometimes we'll bounce it off of people on our team. But this subject, we basically all hands on deck, our whole team, which isn't that many people.
But two of them are men. So yes.
We have two men on the FW team, and we did ask them about this because it's a subject about males, and we learned a lot about it. We had to rewrite it and then rewrite it. And then we didn't agree on some of the points, meaning all of us. So this has been a very interesting ride to write this script. But I feel really good about what we have, but just know that we really struggled to get this right, because what we realized through our struggles is that the beta male, that term, is so misunderstood, and so many people think that it's one thing and so many people think it's another. So we're going to talk about all of that today. And we're going to talk about how to understand the beta male. But before we get into all of that, why do you think this subject is really important for Fascinating Womanhood?
I think it's partly because women, we always seek to understand people, particularly the men in our lives, and it hopefully helps us to understand them better. It isn't really, most of us don't mean to pigeonhole people and say, you are this, so therefore you can't do anything outside of that. But I think we're really just trying to understand what a person's like. And that's part of, we didn't specifically talk about alphas and betas in my book, but it's part of understanding men.
Exactly. And we could talk about understanding men forever. Mm-hmm. That's such a big subject. And it's so nice to be able to get deep into this one particular subject with this very common personality. There's a lot of beta males out there. Moving into more of that, what do you think the definition of beta male is?
See, that's the issue, because there doesn't seem to be one definition. It's like a definition of a feminist. They don't agree. Fascinating Womanhood's purposes, if we can say that, when we refer to a beta male, we don't refer to an insult, because
Right.
some people do. The two men in our group did. But we refer to somebody who is not more sensitive than alpha males. And when I sensitive, I mean sensitive partly to relationships, not just sensitive like they cry all the time, which they would see as negative. More sensitive to people's feelings, to relationships.
I think we can all agree, no matter what definition you believe in, we can all agree that the word sensitive is probably going to be in there when we're describing this man. I think some women are kind of ashamed of being alpha females. And sometimes there's stigma attached to that because you think, oh, I don't want to be known as difficult. But that's not necessarily the case.
Well, especially since when you say alpha and beta and people throw those terms around, they don't go into the nuances of what if you're a mature alpha or an immature alpha. I mean, there's all this range. It isn't just you are this or you are this.
Another description that we got for the beta male, what does it mean? We found this one on the internet. Again, we're not saying we agree with all this. It's just the things that are out there. Mm-hmm. Some people think that a beta male falls within 5 male archetypes. So the alpha, the sigma, the beta, the gamma, the omega. And some people see all of those as a social status. And that's where they see beta as the sliver of the 5. So we also found that, which was very confusing. Mm-hmm.
And I think I get a little bit of a red flag when I see things that kind of encourage people to label people, because people are so much more complex than that. And it isn't like if someone says you are this race, therefore you feel this way. And people are all individuals. So this is just to give us a sort of a place to begin with understanding a person, not the end result.
At the end of the day, we're trying to understand the man that is a little slightly more sensitive. Maybe perhaps that might include him not wanting to be in charge all the time. It might not. It might have to do with him being an introvert and slightly quiet as well.
Yes, although introverts can also be very assertive.
Also want to lastly include that we posed this question on our Instagram account when we were writing. We wanted to hear what our followers thought, because most of our followers, I think it's fair to say, they're familiar with Fascinating Womanhood. They know what we're about, and they might follow other traditional accounts and things like that. So we wanted to hear, we thought, this would be a valuable opinion to put to our audience on Instagram. And we actually, the results of, I think it was only like 400 or so people that voted, but the results showed that 53% of our followers saw the word beta as weakness, a weak person, or a weaker. It's a word that means weakness instead of sensitivity, which was the other word that we
used. I don't know men or women who like to be associated with weakness,
Well, but I thought that was an interesting poll of results, because it just goes to show, like, that's the word that they associate that personality with. Therefore, you're seeing him as a weaker kind of man. And that could go into a whole other thing too, but I just thought that was interesting. So more often than not, we have the alpha woman that is married to the beta man, and she doesn't understand him, and she wants him to take charge. She wants him to crack the whip a little bit more. Mm-hmm. He's frustrated with him. What can we tell those women about that man, and how can they better understand it? So we have 5 key points that we came about the beta male, which we're kind of referring to as the sensitive male, to help you to grow your relationship and to just have a little bit better understanding.
So, number 1, he still, no matter who he is, he still needs to feel competent, and that you recognize that competent in what he does. That's very male, and no matter what he is, he's still male, not like us in every way, in spite of whether he's sensitive or not.
How can you help him feel competent?
Well, that's where we tell the ladies how men need admiration, and specific admiration about things that they're good at. When you see him do whatever he does, say he likes yard work and does a good job, you point that out. It makes him feel competent. It makes him feel like he's good at it. Whatever he does, whether he's a writer, a lumberjack, whatever he does, he needs to feel competent. It's more important to him even than you saying, I love you.
I love your example of Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show. And it makes me, I know that's kind of slapstick and silly, but even if you don't like that show or you haven't seen it, just looking up his character in the Andy Griffith Show, he is the more extreme beta male character. I don't know that the man, Don Knotts, that played him in real life, I don't know if
He was not like that. He wasn't like that at all. In fact, he got offended when people assumed that was him. It wasn't.
Yeah.
He created the character. Yeah.
Great job portraying kind of like this extreme beta character, but there's so many scenes in so many episodes where either Andy, his partner at work, or even the ladies will give him compliments and he will feel competent. You can just see it build him up, and it just you can tell it means so much to him, and it brings out his assertiveness and his masculinity just because he feels like someone's recognizing his masculinity.
His character, what's interesting about it, he is really more of a sensitive male, like you said, that wants so bad to be alpha, but he isn't really as much. And he said himself that the character that he wrote is a guy who feels on the inside like a lot of men do. Everything that he feels shows on the surface. So you can see what he can't hide anything. He can't hide any of his emotions. And of course he amplifies that for comedy.
Right.
But men feel a lot of the things that he feels, but they either don't act on it, they don't show it, they don't talk about it, they don't let it be seen.
Yeah. And I just love some of those examples to helping him to feel more competent, watching a lot, so many episodes that you could watch and you can see, again, it's just kind of a silly example, but it does kind of have the spirit of what we're talking about.
And it's an enduring character. Number 2, he needs you to see and look for the best in him. And that's slightly different from him being competent, that too. Right. But he needs you to look past some of the mistakes that he makes and look past to what he means by what he's doing, which requires a lot of interpretation on your part, but you know this man, so you can do it. What does he mean when he says this? Even on the outset, it might sound like, what? Look to what he's meaning, what he's trying to do. And that's what we also call treasure hunting. I don't know a person alive who wouldn't appreciate somebody taking this attitude towards them.
I think all men want this, but I think an example for the beta male specifically with looking for the best in him is that it's so easy, especially if you are a stronger personality female married to this more sensitive man. It's so easy to let those kind of smaller things distract you from his good things, especially if you're an alpha female. You might see this constant, oh, why doesn't he do this? Why doesn't he do this? And it's easy to fall into that because he's a little bit more sensitive. Again, so many different types of beta males, but
well, that's also, interestingly enough, probably why you were attracted to him, because alpha females don't usually get along really great with alpha males. They clash. What we tend to do is they tend to want to pick and choose the qualities of alpha in their husband they would like, but they don't want to take the result if he actually was like that. And you think if he was this way, he'd also probably be like this, and I don't think I'd like that so well. So you got to consider that in what you wish that he was more this way. Well, if he was, he'd also have a bunch of other things you may not like so much.
It's not like you're shopping for a car and you can pick all the things that you want when you're looking at your husband's strengths, and you have to accept them. And right. I think, treasure hunting allows you to accept them because you're literally getting in the habit of your mind looking for the best in him. I know that sounds so simple, but
one of the things that can really help with that is the new booklet we put out, your romantic love journal. That's designed to help you treasure hunt all the time, and it's fun. And you can look through and see what you wrote before. He is very masculine, which means that sensitivity does not mean not masculine. Sensitive males are still masculine. Just because they're sensitive, they don't become like females.
And if you're starting to see him as that way, because he's not, let's just say he's not taking charge of something. We hear that all the time. He's not taking the reins on something. Just because he's not taking the reins on that doesn't mean that it's your moment to step in and take it, and that could be different for so many different for everyone. I know that sounds a little vague, but I think just constantly reminding yourself that he is still a masculine man in there. Maybe this is just an area that he doesn't feel confident in.
Or it could be something from his childhood that affects him not taking charge of something. Maybe it reminds him of something his father used to do that he didn't like. People are all unique. And so that's why we emphasize so much looking at the man in your life as unique in many ways, and not totally saying he's this or he's this, because there'll be nuances to all of it.
That makes me think of the character of George Bailey on It's a Wonderful Life, and how all his life, he didn't want to be in charge of his father's bank and that business. And he just wanted to travel, and he didn't want all this responsibility. And he took the responsibility because he felt like he had to.
And he was a responsible guy.
Yeah. And he did it anyway. And I think, his wife, which is such a great example in the movie of a feminine, supportive woman, she really validated him. And that's why he did rise, I think, to the occasion in that story. Number 4.
Immature versus mature. This is so important. And men are, again, not totally mature and totally immature, but varying degrees. And a man who's really young, say you're newly married or in a relationship with somebody, and they haven't lived a long time. They don't know a lot of things. You've got to allow for them to grow. And just because they're in their 20s doesn't mean they're fully mature, because they're not. They'll change their mind on some things over time. Categorizing them into something that's more got rigid boundaries is not a wise thing to do, because he's unique and is capable of growth.
I absolutely believe that this point, number 4, is why we have so much confusion about the definition.
I agree.
Because, when you're talking about a mature beta male, a mature alpha male, a mature alpha female, an immature alpha female, those are completely different people in a way, and with completely different challenges. So if he is an immature beta male, you recognizing that alone is going to help you understand what's going on. Even if it's not your, even if you're trying to understand your beta male son.
When I hear immature beta male, I think of a wounded person, somebody who's had a lot of wounds and maybe didn't have great parenting, or, even if parents mean well, didn't get things happen to them in their lives. People that have, tragedies happen. All kinds of things happen in this life. Maybe they had a serious health problem and are used to being in pain a lot of the time. There's so many things to consider. A mature man is going to be able to be a lot more forgiving, a lot more, instead of trying to push his way through all the time. Alphas are not always trying to get their way. A more mature alpha is a person who might say, I want to be president of this company, but I realize that in order to be president, I have to be a good follower, and I have to do it maybe for years, because presidents of companies don't just surround themselves with betas. They often surround themselves with other alphas that are wise enough to not try to say, well, I should be in charge.
I think the more mature beta male you're talking about, the less conflict you're probably going to see, because he is going to be a little bit more balanced. But he's still going to have those moments where he needs you to understand certain things about him.
Well, like George Bailey. George Bailey is a good example, because he was really quite mature, and he just did what needed to be done for years and years.
Just remember this, Mr. Potter, that this rabble you're talking about, they do most of the working and paying and living and dying in this community. Well, is it too much to have them work and pay and live and die in a couple of decent rooms and a bath? Anyway, my father didn't think so. People were human beings to him, but to you, a warped, frustrated old man, they're cattle. Well, in my book, he died a much richer man than you'll ever be.
He just made the best of it because so many unfortunate things happened to that he just kind of got really discouraged. But even then, his wife reacted perfectly.
Right. And I think too, with the beta male that is immature, one of the things that the guys said, and we were talking about the subject, and one of the things that stuck with me is they said that the immature beta male has a tendency to hide a little bit, and not physically hiding, but emotionally hide from difficult things, difficult situations. If he's married to an alpha female, let her kind of take it because he hides from it. And that's where I think it's so important to recognize the immaturity. If he is not rising to the occasion of helping you with something difficult because he's immature and he doesn't want to face it, that's where you understanding this about him can help him feel more confident. Does that make sense?
Yes. And when it comes to parenting, there's a lot of men, not all, obviously, but there's a lot of men who don't take the upper hand with disciplining kids because they don't feel competent to do it. It's not that they don't feel like they're good at it. And maybe they've tried and gotten kind of criticized because they were too hard. And so they back off. Men tend to, like all people, they tend to like to do things more that they feel good at or competent at. And they kind of resist stuff that they feel like, I'm not very good at that and I'm going to mess it up.
What's your best advice for, let's say the woman says, I need him to take the lead more with discipline and he's just not doing it. What is your advice for that woman, knowing that he is a beta male?
Oh, tell him what you would like him to do. How, not just take charge is too vague. Or what do I do to take charge? Say, when this happens, would you do this? Would you step in and do that? Because then it's a task. Then he has a task to do. Oh, I can do that.
So be very specific with him about what you want to do and how.
And then when he does it, validate it. Thank you for doing that. That was really helpful.
Okay.
Take charge is vague. It isn't to us, but it is to them.
We get a lot of vague questions, so
yeah.
To kind of like fill in the blanks, but we do hear that a lot, especially with discipline in children.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes other men will poke fun at men that are betas. Like alpha men will poke fun at beta males, and because there's this joke amongst them that they're lesser. And I think it's just so important that we as the females have the understanding here that he's probably been put down for his personality all of his life. I don't know, maybe he hasn't, but.
And there's many degrees of it. Sometimes he just thinks, I don't care. But we care when we see how they're treated. His sensitivity isn't the same as a woman's sensitivity. So many times we as women can fall into the kind of a trap of thinking he's sensitive, therefore he should be sensitive in the same way we are, and get frustrated with him when he is not. And so we misunderstand him. Just like we kind of said above, he's still a man. He's still male. His version of sensitivity is not going to be identical to ours.
Yeah, that's so important. And it can be, I've been guilty of this as well with beta males that I've known. I go to them. I used to work with one, and I would go to him with my frustrations, just like I would with a female. And I caught myself doing it. And there were moments where I think he just kind of felt overwhelmed because it was so many words, and it was so much, because we get all women, we can verbalize a lot. And I think,
oh boy, yeah, we do.
I didn't even realize that I did it until we were writing this video. And I thought back to like, well, what beta males do I know? And I kind of had this replay in my mind of conversations I had with this coworker, and I was like, oh my gosh, I totally did that. I thought he was sensitive and I could talk to him like a girl. And I was wrong.
You were wrong. Well, I've had that experience with some relatives that are male, that I thought, oh, this is somebody who's more like me because he talks about relationships more, and will talk to me about that really hurt someone's feelings when this happened. So I made the mistake of thinking that he was more like me than he was. Boy, did I find out that wasn't true. I thought, wow, this reaction that he had to a particular subject, I thought, no, he's definitely male. he's all male.
We're not striving, for perfection here. It's just an awareness thing, because just being aware of that is going to give you a better relationship with your husband, if that's what we're talking about here. There might be women watching this who have beta sons and they want this advice for them, or beta father-in-law, or there's so many different men that you might want this advice for. But I think the key is just being aware of a lot of these things.
Well, and if it's a son who's more sensitive, some parents mistakenly try to turn them into something that they're not, and it just hurts them, and they don't feel understood, and they feel lesser. You don't want your sons to have poor self-esteem because.
Ahoy!
Take a look, Fritz.
There's something on the sail. I can't.
I knew it. It's the pirate ship that chased us into the storm. Get down. Let's get down.
And I deliberately tried to get their attention.
It's called Swiss Family Robinson. It's a really popular Disney movie.
It's a Disney, yeah.
But it's a great example of when we're talking about the beta younger man, because the parents in that film did a really nice job. They have an alpha son and a beta son, and they do a really nice job of seeing the best in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
But as you pointed out, the clash between the brothers is just a constant competition, and the character that is the beta, he kind of constantly feels like he's not good enough. That would be a good one to watch if you're wanting a visual example for the younger beta.
And the parents supported their son in wanting to go to college and become very book learned, whereas the older son thought that the best idea of masculinity was to do a lot of physical things and build and chop down forests and stuff like that. So
he did end up winning the female character in the film, and I think that was something kind of, there's something very traditional about how they wrote that story, and he ends up getting the girl, which I don't think would necessarily always be the case. But
so if you're an alpha female married to more of a beta or sensitive man, it's important for you to take these ideas and learn to understand him better. And also remember, you picked him, you were attracted to him. And two alphas rarely have great marriages. They can, but they don't tend to, which is also another means you may be a good match, and you're longing for him to have certain alpha characteristics. You'll have to get all the stuff you don't like so well with it. So every man wants to feel competent. Every man wants to feel admired and masculine. And that's something you can do something about starting today. And it's not hard.
Yeah, I do have to say too, every person is valuable. And if it weren't for these men, like you mentioned earlier, the songs that we have from like you said, sensitive men had to have written some of these beautiful love songs, and sensitive men sometimes are really articulate men that have a lot of patience and have built skyscrapers, and like these men are very valuable. And
architects, actors tend to be sensitive. Not everyone, and writers tend to be sensitive. Musicians are often sensitive, because to get that out like they do, that kind of goes into our soul, they have to be good at that. But that there's a downside to that they become, their sensitivity can get them in trouble sometimes, just like it can get us in trouble, but they're still male.
Right. And they're so valuable. I can't imagine a world without this type of man.
The greatest love songs are written by men, and yet women think they're so insensitive. And I'm grateful for all of them.
I hope you enjoyed this video, and please leave a comment if there's something that you feel we missed about the beta male. What do you think a definition of a beta male is? What kind of challenges have you had, if you've had any, with a beta male? We love to hear from you and hear your stories and your questions. We are here every week, so don't forget to check back with us next time. I'm attaching all the links down below this video for places that you can find us on social media, as well as all of the places you can buy Dixie's books and workbooks. And we will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.